The Iran crisis, economic uncertainty, oil price rises, a potential return to high levels of inflation, and consumers mitigating the effects of price rises. It's not surprising that grocery brand manufacturers are concerned about market volumes, about the choice between brands and private label, and also store selection. What can we learn from past and current trends and the best courses of action? I'm Richard Herbert, an independent global insight consultant working with Europanel. In this series of short videos, I'm talking to a number of leading professors in the grocery field, the aim being to bring their experience and work in such hard economic times to bear, and of course the advice that they would give. Our first interview with Professor Oliver Koen looked at the insights and actions related to overall market and category volumes. Today I'm joined by Koen Pauwels, a distinguished professor of marketing at Northeastern University, Boston, and co-director of its Digital Analytics, Technology and Automation Initiative. Koen, amongst other roles, is also senior editor for the Journal of Marketing and the International Journal of Research in Marketing. Our focus today is marketing mix. What can we learn from past and current trends, and how manufacturer brands should act? Hi Koen, good to speak to you.
Great to see you again, Richard.
And you have a very wintry background, but
I like to keep cool in the summer. Yeah.
Indeed. The discussion with Oliver showed that overall grocery market remains extremely stable at such times of inflation and hardship. It even increases as consumers cut back elsewhere. Do you have any additional insights or comments that you could share on this before we move on to brands and choice of brands?
Yeah, as I always tell people, folks still gotta eat. So it is true that grocery categories tend to be less recession sensitive than things where consumers can cut completely back on much more easily. So I just want to contrast it with the car market, right? So if you look at the car market, it's a place where people can wait a year or so before they're replacing their current car. And so, I mean, in some of my research on, should you launch new products in recessions, for instance, the car market is kind of a very acid test. In grocery markets, though, people have, first of all, they still have to eat or drink, as may be. Number two, it's typically, for most of us in pretty privileged positions, it's typically just a smaller part of our budget. And so we tend to use it also for what people have called affordable indulgences. So if the future looks bleak, if times are hard, economics are not going the way that we want, we do still want to feel good about ourselves. And grocery categories are just a wonderful opportunity to indulge for yourself or your family or friends, at least in some way that doesn't break the bank.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting that the grocery categories and which ones succeed and which ones are growing or declining is not related to price and price increases. It's almost independent of that, and it's a bigger point than that, which is, I guess, where we come on to look at brand choice, where there are choices to be had in relationship to private labels, which tends to grow at these sorts of times. So how do you see this, and what have you learned from the work that you've done?
Yeah, and so I've been studying private label for over 20 years now. And I mean, first of all, what I find, and lots of my colleagues too, is of course that in general in recessions, private label share grows. And this has to do with consumers thinking, hey, why am I paying a price premium for this national brand? And it's becoming harder and harder to justify if it's an important part of your budget specifically. So in those categories, we see people trying the private label for the first time. And as I typically say, once you try it, you don't go back. So a lot of these folks continue buying it even when the economic hard times disappear. And so my colleagues, for instance, Marnie de Kimper, Barbara de Leersnijder, with data provided by your wonderful companies, by the way, have shown that private label share tends to go up in recessions, but doesn't come down as quickly when the boom times arrive. So I think this is a very important kind of phenomenon for national brands to really monitor and make sure that kind of the value gap between them and private labels doesn't increase too much. On the other hand, as we said before, this is also the time of affordable indulgences. So in some categories, consumers face hard choices, but if you can communicate as well and also show that you have the goods to basically justify the price premium, you're much more innovative. Your marketing communication is just, reaching the right customer with the right message. Then as a national brand, you can stave off that erosion of your market share.
And this is as good a time as any, if not a better time, to invest. Is that
definitely.
Right?
Yeah. So the research I did on new products. So we started in the US car market, and then the wonderful reviewers said, hey, does that also work elsewhere? So we actually looked at the UK all consumer grocery categories, and we found, yes, in every single category, launching new products in a recession actually had better survival chances than products used in boom times. Very surprising. And the major thing we found out there when we asked consumers is that, when all the news is bad, then you do want some good news. Yeah. And people still want to explore. They still are curious. Among, I think, all European consumers, I believe that UK consumers are amongst the most innovative in trying new products. And so if you are not completely tone deaf, of course, if you do kind of position the new product as something that people should really try and it's not too incredibly expensive, then they are willing to splurge, and they're still curious, and they still want to find out how to improve their lives.
Yeah, exactly what it seems to show, doesn't it? Yeah. Moving on to perhaps our final section today, which is around the marketing mix, and I know you've done a lot of work on this area, the strategies, combinations. What things work best at these sorts of times, and how can manufacturers deliver that on their brands and their categories?
Well, I would say, everything in marketing is about perceptions. So, my very first paper ever was about reference prices. And so, yes, your price matters, specifically in times of high inflation, but it's really about consumer perception. And so if everybody is increasing their prices, then you don't stand out by doing the same, especially if you can justify it because of cost increases. So consumers tend to be less upset with price increases when everybody does it, right? So the comparison doesn't really change. And also when they see that you have a clear reason to. So if you're a company that continues to invest in the best ingredients, which may be a bit harder to get now, including because of tariffs, right? If you're a company that continues to invest in their people and doesn't suddenly lay off thousands of folks without a clear justification. So if you're seen as a company and a brand that has their house in order and generally is a contributor also to society, is what I find, then people are willing to live with slightly higher prices, as long as the gap between alternative is not too high. So I would really look at the perception of both your price and, of course, your product, the value it provides, how innovative it is, how suitable it is for me and my family. And I would monitor that very closely. And it's when this perception gap starts to become too large, you get over a threshold, and I've quantified it in some of my research for grocery markets. Once you get over the threshold, you basically almost force otherwise loyal consumers to at least try other brands. And that's, of course, very risky because they may go there and then not come back. So this is a time to invest. It's a time to invest in measurement, including perceptions. And it's a time to really invest in having great data to make good decisions so that you can pinpoint where these thresholds lay.
And those thresholds can be relative to private label, but they can also be past an average for a category or past a specific brand, all of those sorts of things.
Yeah. So a lot of consumers, and I did some research about which consumers, right, use what we call internal reference prices, which is, they really care about your brand, but they kind of remember what they paid last time. And, they look at that contrast. Other people make more decisions at the time in the supermarket, and they're like, hey, compared to the private label, which is put right next to your brand, and with a big sticker saying, hey, save 40%. What it is, and that's an external reference price. And you're correct. So I think that the major danger to focus in that, when the question of the consumer changes from why would I buy the private label? I'm still relatively well off. Why would I take the risk? To why not? Why not try the private label? Because are the national brands really that much different? And so that is something important to continue to monitor and to make good decisions based on.
And anything you would advise in terms of promotions?
So, yes, I would say, number one, don't overestimate the power of temporary price reductions. And that's typically because, hey, if you give a temporary price reduction, then yes, you have a deal now, but then your return to regular price tends to upset people more in terms of recessions. And we have basically linked that to the psychological theory of promotion versus prevention focus. So temporary price reductions and one-off deals and promotions, they're great for people who are in promotion focus. Somebody like me is a great example. I like to use promotions and displays to discover new things, and I'm not too upset when you return to regular price. In recession time, there's more people in what we call prevention focus, and there are less looking for opportunity and more for what we call disasters to avoid. And they tend to be much more risk averse, and they really are upset with a return to regular prices. So I would say in times of recession and hardship, focus on stuff that change people's life in a more enduring level, right? So if you increase the quality of your products, you basically have given the consumer a more enduring reason to continue buying. If you are able to afford a regular price decrease, that's seen as a much better signal than, and of course also communicate that, right? That's seen as a much better signal than anything you do temporary, because consumers are not, they're pretty smart actually. They realize if they switch to your brand, let's say, or stick to it, and it's a temporary thing, that they may on the hook for, more expenses later on.
That's very interesting, Koen. I hadn't quite thought of it in that way, but that's extremely interesting. I'm sure very useful to our audience, hopefully. I think that's all we had time for today. I think my next interview is either with Jan Benedict Steenkamp or with Marnik de Kimper. I'm not quite sure which to be organised, but thank you very much for your time today, and great to speak to you again. And I won't see you this coming week in the UK, but have a good trip. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.